Desperate to cover his mother's crippling medical debts, nursing student Owen Davis agrees to a shocking one-year marriage contract with the powerful, enigmatic businesswoman Genevieve Dubois, a woman decades his senior. He thinks it's a simple transaction: play the devoted husband in public, live in luxury and walk away rich, until coded messages, locked rooms and near-fatal accidents make him realize Genevieve's proposal wasn't about companionship, but survival, and he's become the unwitting shield in a dangerous game he doesn't understand. Will Owen uncover the truth before it's too late? Give this story a like if you're hooked by this dangerous bargain, and subscribe for more thrilling tales of secrets, sacrifice and high-stakes arrangements. Now let the perilous game begin. The fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor cast a sterile, unforgiving glow, reflecting the exhaustion etched deep into Owen Davis's features. He leaned his forehead against the cool glass of the waiting room window, gazing out at the indifferent city lights of Philadelphia, without really seeing them. Inside the adjacent room, his mother, Marianne, slept fitfully, her breathing shallow, tethered to machines that monitored the erratic rhythm of a heart weakened by years of battling a rare autoimmune disorder. Each beep felt like a countdown clock, measuring not just her fragile health but the rapidly dwindling funds meant to sustain it. At 24, Owen felt the crushing weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He was supposed to be focused on his final, critical year of nursing school, mastering complex procedures during grueling clinical rotations, absorbing mountains of information for exams. Instead, his mind was a constant, frantic calculator, trying to stretch the meager earnings from his weekend job as an orderly at a different hospital and the dwindling disability checks to cover the astronomical costs of Marianne's specialized care, the mortgage on their small row house, and his own overdue tuition fees. His father, a firefighter, had died in the line of duty 5 years prior, leaving behind love and memories, but little financial security. It was just Owen and his mom, and the mountain of debt grew higher each day. He'd just come from a tense conversation with the hospital's financial counselor. Polite but firm, she'd outlined the unavoidable reality. Without a substantial payment within the next 30 days, Marianne would need to be transferred to a state-run facility, a place Owen knew lacked the specialized immunology department, crucial for her treatment. The thought sent a cold wave of panic through him. He couldn't let that happen. His mother deserved better. He had to find a way. Back in his small, cluttered room in the house he shared with 2 other students to save money, Owen stared blankly at his laptop screen. Scholarship applications had been rejected, loan options exhausted. He'd even considered selling the row house, but where would they live? Selling his father's few cherished belongings felt like a betrayal. He scrolled through online job listings, medical transport, late-night shelf stocking, anything. But nothing offered the kind of immediate, substantial income he desperately needed. Despair began to seep in, cold and heavy. It was nearly 2 a.m. when a notification popped up on a secure, encrypted messaging app he rarely used, one recommended by a tech-savvy classmate for private study groups. The message was from an anonymous user ID, displaying only a cryptic symbol, Mr. Owen Davis. Confidential source indicates you possess specific qualifications: nursing student, demonstrable financial need related to maternal care, unattached, discreet profile, aligning with a unique, time-sensitive proposal from a high-net-worth individual. This is not solicitation, it is a potential solution. If interested in exploring a highly compensated, contractually defined 1-year personal arrangement requiring absolute confidentiality, respond only with "interested" within the next 10 minutes. This channel will then close permanently, Owen. Read the message, his heart suddenly pounding against his ribs. It felt unreal, like something from a spy novel. How could anyone know such specific details about his situation? Confidential source, high-net-worth individual, personal arrangement. His mind immediately jumped to illicit activities: organ donation, medical experiments, something illegal, dangerous. Yet the phrasing was oddly formal, corporate even. And the mention of a contractually defined arrangement, highly compensated, it snagged on the hook of his desperation. What did he have to lose by simply expressing interest? It felt reckless, possibly stupid, but the image of his mother in that hospital bed, the ticking clock of the payment deadline. With trembling fingers, he typed the single word, interested. He hit send just as the 10-minute window was closing. The message thread instantly vanished, leaving no trace. He sat there, staring at the blank screen, adrenaline coursing through him, wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake or opened a door to a bizarre, unforeseen possibility. Sleep was impossible now. He waited, nerves frayed, jumping at every notification sound from his phone. Nothing. Hours passed. Dawn began to break, painting the Philadelphia skyline in hues of gray and pink. Maybe it was just a cruel hoax, a glitch. Then, precisely at 7 a.m., an email arrived in his main inbox. The sender address was obscured, routed through multiple proxy servers according to the header information he barely understood. The subject line simply read, "Proposal following initial expression of interest." The email itself was brief, chillingly, devoid of emotion, formatted like a legal memorandum. Mr. Davis, further to your expressed interest, the proposal entails a 1-year legal marriage contract. Principal, Genevieve Dubois, CEO Dubois International Holdings. Requirements: serve as legal spouse, maintain absolute discretion, reside at principal's primary residence, provided. Attend approximately 10-12 designated public corporate events per annum, adhere strictly to household security protocols. No conjugal relations or emotional entanglement expected or permitted. Compensation: immediate transfer of $500,000 USD upon legal execution of marriage certificate and accompanying. NDA prenuptial agreements. Additional $500,000 USD completion bonus upon amicable, legally finalized dissolution after 366 days. Non-negotiable. A preliminary secure meeting is scheduled for 14 hours today. Location details and transportation protocols will follow via secure text to your primary mobile number 1 hour prior. Confirm attendance by replying "Confirm" within 30 minutes. Failure to reply or attend forfeits the proposal. Owen read the email 3 times, his mind struggling to process the information. Genevieve Dubois. The name was vaguely familiar. A powerful, elusive figure in international finance and tech, rarely photographed, known for her brilliance, her ruthlessness in business, and her extreme privacy. He remembered seeing her mentioned in relation to massive global deals, a titan operating in spheres far removed from his own reality. And she wanted to marry him, a 24-year-old nursing student, for a year. The compensation figures were staggering, $1 million total, enough to cover his mother's care indefinitely, pay off his student loans, secure their house, maybe even set aside funds for his future. It was a solution beyond anything he could have imagined. But the conditions? Live with her? Attend galas? Absolute discretion? No emotional entanglement? It sounded cold, transactional, bizarre. Why would a woman like Genevieve Dubois need such an arrangement? Why him specifically? The message mentioned his qualifications: nursing student, financial need, discreet profile. Had he been scouted, vetted? The thought was deeply unsettling, yet the desperation gnawed at him. This offered not just a solution, but total liberation from the financial terror that ruled his life. Could he endure a year of playing a part, living in a stranger's world for that kind of security? He thought of his mother's face, the beeping machines, the looming deadline. With a deep breath that felt like plunging into icy water, he typed, "Confirm an hour before the scheduled meeting." A text arrived with encrypted instructions. Proceed to a specific quiet corner in Philly's Old City. Wait for a black sedan, license plate ending in XYZ. Provide the code phrase, Nightingale. Owen felt a thrill of apprehension mixed with the unreality of it all. He put on his best, though still slightly worn chinos and a collared shirt, trying to look presentable, feeling hopelessly out of his depth. The black sedan arrived precisely on time. The driver, stone-faced and silent, confirmed the code phrase and opened the rear door. Owen slid onto the plush leather seats, the windows darkly tinted, isolating him from the outside world. They drove in silence for nearly 40 minutes, heading out of the city towards the affluent mainline suburbs, eventually turning onto a long private road marked by discreet security cameras. The road wound through dense, mature woodland, finally opening onto a breathtaking estate. Unlike the hyper-modern mansion he might have expected from a tech-adjacent CEO, the house was a magnificent, sprawling stone manor, evoking old-world European elegance, but immaculately maintained. Ivy climbed the weathered stone walls, slate tiles gleamed on the complex rooflines, and leaded glass windows glinted in the afternoon sun. Manicured lawns sloped down towards formal gardens bursting with late-season blooms. It wasn't cold or sterile. It felt solid, imposing, steeped in history and quiet, immense wealth. The car pulled smoothly to a stop before the main entrance. The driver opened Owen's door, gesturing wordlessly towards the heavy oak front door, which opened silently as Owen approached, revealing Mr. Davies, though Owen didn't know his name yet. He was a tall, impeccably dressed man in his late 60s with thinning grey hair, sharp features, and an air of quiet, watchful authority. He radiated competence and discretion. "Mr. Davis," the man greeted him, his voice a low, cultured baritone. "Welcome. Mrs. Dubois is expecting you. Please, follow me." Owen followed the man, Mr. Davies, he would learn, through a grand entrance hall with a soaring ceiling, intricate woodwork, and oil paintings that looked like museum pieces. Their footsteps echoed softly on the polished hardwood floors. Davies led him through several elegantly furnished, hushed rooms into a large sunlit conservatory filled with exotic plants and comfortable wicker furniture overlooking a serene reflecting pool. Genevieve Dubois sat in a high-backed rattan chair, nursing a delicate teacup. Seeing her in person was more impactful than Owen had anticipated. She was, as the brief online mention suggested, likely in her late 50s or early 60s, but carried herself with the poise and energy of someone much younger. She was strikingly elegant, dressed in a tailored cream pantsuit that bespoke quiet expense. Her silver blonde hair was cut in a sharp, sophisticated bob, framing a face with high cheekbones, intelligent eyes the color of pale jade, and a mouth that hinted at both firm resolve and, perhaps long ago, a smile. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, perhaps, but she possessed an undeniable aura of power, control, and sharp intellect. She looked directly at Owen, her gaze cool, appraising, missing nothing. "Mr. Davis," she said, her voice smooth, cultured, with a hint of a European accent he couldn't quite place. "Thank you for coming. Please join me. Tea?" No thank you, Mrs. Dubois," Owen managed, sitting stiffly on the edge of the cushion, feeling acutely aware of his own youth and relative poverty in her presence. Mr. Davies melted silently into the background near the door. Genevieve placed her teacup carefully onto the small table beside her. "Mr. Davis," she began, getting straight to the point, her jade eyes studying him intently. "You understand the parameters outlined in the email communication?" "Yes, Mrs. Dubois, a 1-year marriage contract, financial compensation in exchange." "Fergie," he hesitated, unsure how to phrase it. "Fulfilling the role of your husband publicly." "Precisely," she confirmed with a slight nod. "The financial terms are generous, designed to alleviate your documented pressures and ensure your complete cooperation and discretion for the duration." She paused. "Do you have any questions regarding the terms themselves?" Owen swallowed. "Just, why Mrs. Dubois? Why me? It seems like an extreme measure." A flicker of something, impatience, weariness, crossed her elegant features before being instantly smoothed away. "My reasons, Mr. Davis, are complex and private. Let us say that for the next 12 months, presenting a stable, settled domestic front is strategically advantageous for reasons you do not need to concern yourself with. My team," she gestured vaguely, likely referring to the confidential source, "identified you as a suitable candidate based on specific criteria. Your age demographic, your unblemished background aside from financial pressures, your chosen profession, which implies a degree of empathy and trustworthiness, and crucially, your demonstrable need, which provides leverage for ensuring compliance." Leverage. The word chilled Owen. This wasn't an offer, it was a transaction where she held all the power. "And you're certain this is strictly business? No other expectations?" he asked, needing to hear it from her directly. "Absolutely," she stated coolly, meeting his gaze without flinching. "This is a contractual arrangement, not a romance novel. Separate living quarters, separate lives, apart from the necessary public appearances. Your primary role is discretion and presence when required. Can you fulfill that role, Mr. Davis? Can you convincingly portray a devoted young husband for 1 year without succumbing to curiosity or complications?" Owen thought of his mother, of the overwhelming relief that $1 million sum represented. He thought of finishing nursing school, of finally breathing freely without the constant chokehold of debt. It was 1 year. He could do anything for 1 year, couldn't he? He could play a part. "Yes, Mrs. Dubois," he said, forcing conviction into his voice. "I can." "Excellent," she replied, the faintest hint of satisfaction in her tone. She picked up a slim silver pen from the table. "Mr. Davies has the necessary documents prepared. If you are ready to proceed, we can finalize the agreements now. The marriage ceremony can take place discreetly tomorrow." Owen hesitated for only a fraction of a second. This was it, the point of no return. He nodded slowly. "I'm ready." Genevieve signaled to Mr. Davies, who approached silently with a leather-bound portfolio. The next hour was a blur of legal documents, the prenuptial agreement, the non-disclosure, contract, clauses covering every conceivable contingency, all explained in dense legalese by Davies. Owen signed where indicated, his hand feeling unsteady, his mind struggling to grasp the full implications of the papers bearing his signature alongside the elegant, decisive script of Genevieve Dubois. He had just legally bound himself to this. Powerful, enigmatic stranger, stepping into a world utterly unlike his own, for reasons he didn't understand. As Mr. Davies gathered the signed documents, Genevieve stood up, offering Owen a cool, formal nod. "Arrangements will be made for your belongings to be moved tomorrow following the ceremony, Mr. Davis," she said. "Mr. Davies will escort you out now. My driver will return you." She offered no handshake, no further explanation. Just a dismissal, as cool and efficient as the contract itself. Walking back through the silent, opulent house, Owen felt a dizzying mix of relief and profound unease. His financial nightmare was over, but a new, unknown chapter, shrouded in secrets and governed by the inscrutable Genevieve Dubois, was just beginning. He had the distinct feeling he hadn't just signed a marriage contract, but perhaps enlisted in a very private, very dangerous war. The civil ceremony at Philadelphia's City Hall the next day was a swift, sterile affair that felt utterly detached from the emotional significance usually associated with marriage. Owen stood beside Genevieve Dubois, feeling numb in a new, well-fitting suit that Mr. Davies had silently procured and delivered to his apartment that morning. Genevieve wore a simple but exquisitely cut Chanel suit in pale grey, her expression composed, revealing nothing. The only witnesses were Mr. Davies and a severe-looking woman Owen assumed was Genevieve's lawyer. The justice of the peace recited the standard vows with practiced indifference. Owen murmured, "I do," when prompted, his voice sounding distant, unfamiliar. Genevieve's "I do" was clear, crisp, devoid of hesitation or sentiment. There was no exchange of rings, no kiss, just the swift signing of the license, the official pronouncement, and then they were outside on the steps, legally, husband and wife, yet complete strangers bound only by a contract thick with clauses and unspoken implications. "My driver will take you directly to the residence, Mr. Davis," Genevieve stated coolly, as a black sedan pulled silently to the curb. "Mr. Davies has overseen the transfer of your essential belongings. Your suite is prepared. I have business. Meetings downtown this afternoon and will return this evening. Dinner is typically served at 8, though I often take mine in my study. You are free to use the main dining room." It was less an invitation, more a statement of logistics. With a brief, formal nod, she turned and entered a separate, identical black sedan that seemed to materialize from nowhere, and was gone. Left standing on the sidewalk with Mr. Davies, Owen felt a profound sense of unreality wash over him. He was married to Genevieve Dubois. He was moving into her magnificent, imposing mansion. His crushing debts were presumably being erased even as they spoke. Yet he felt no joy, only a deepening unease and the distinct sensation of having stepped through a looking-glass into a world where nothing was quite as it seemed. Mr. Davies cleared his throat softly. "If you're ready, Mr. Davis." He gestured towards the waiting car. The drive back to the estate was made in silence. Owen stared out the tinted window, watching. The familiar city streets give way to the manicured exclusivity of the mainline suburbs. He tried to focus on the positive. His mother's care secured, his tuition no longer a crippling burden, the chance to finally focus on his nursing studies. But the hushed conversation he'd overheard Davies having on the phone kept replaying in his mind. Package, Thorn, contingency, he suspects nothing, serves his purpose. What purpose? What contingency? And who was Thorn? Arriving back at the Stone Manor felt different this time. Yesterday he had been a visitor, a candidate under consideration. Today he was technically a resident, the husband of the estate's owner, yet he felt even more like an outsider, an imposter. Mr. Davies led him inside, the silence of the house swallowing the sound of their footsteps. "Your primary suite is located in the west wing, Mr. Davis," Davies explained smoothly as they ascended a grand curving staircase. "It offers considerable privacy, while still allowing access to the main household areas you are permitted to use. The library, the gymnasium, the formal dining room, the gardens immediately adjacent to the west terrace." The way he phrased it subtly reinforced the existence of boundaries, of off-limits zones. Mrs. Dubois' private wing and offices are located in the east wing and are strictly private, as previously discussed. The suite was breathtaking, larger than Owen's entire previous apartment. It comprised a spacious bedroom decorated in muted tones of grey and navy, a luxurious marble bathroom, a comfortable sitting room with its own fireplace and stocked bookshelf filled with classics and contemporary thrillers, Owen noted with faint surprise, and a small, well-equipped kitchenette hidden behind sleek cabinetry. Floor to ceiling. Windows overlooked a different section of the formal gardens, beautiful but eerily devoid of life. His few boxes of belongings, clothes, textbooks, a framed photo of his parents on their wedding day, another of his mother smiling before the illness took hold, looked ridiculously out of place amidst the understated luxury. They had been unpacked and put away with unnerving efficiency. His worn jeans hung awkwardly beside bespoke suits he hadn't known existed until the tailor's visit, clearly provided as part of his role. "Should you require anything, Mr. Davis," Davies continued, pausing at the doorway, "you may use the intercom system to reach my office or the kitchen staff between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Outside of those hours, only emergency protocols should be activated. Mrs. Dubois values uninterrupted quiet." He handed Owen a slim encrypted smartphone. "This device is pre-programmed with necessary contacts and secure communication apps. It is for essential communication related to household matters or Mrs. Dubois' schedule only. Your personal device should not be used for any communication regarding your residency here." Another layer of control, of enforced secrecy. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," Owen managed, taking the phone. "Dinner will be served at 8 in the main dining room, should you wish to partake," Davies added. "Mrs. Dubois' attendance is variable. Enjoy your afternoon." He gave another slight nod and departed, closing the heavy suite door softly behind him, leaving Owen alone in the opulent, echoing silence. Owen spent the next few hours exploring his new cage, however gilded. He touched the cool marble of the bathroom counter, ran his hand over the smooth, dark wood of the antique writing desk, peered into the fully stocked mini-fridge in the kitchenette. It was all perfect, impersonal and utterly isolating. He tried to study, opening his pathophysiology textbook, but the words blurred. His mind kept returning to the bizarre contract, the enigmatic Genevieve, the hushed phone call. He felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that he was a pawn in a game whose rules and stakes were completely hidden from him. He wandered out into the permitted section of the gardens as dusk began to settle. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and late-blooming roses. The garden was beautiful, undeniably, but its perfect symmetry, its lack of any wildness, felt oppressive. He found a stone bench overlooking a serene koi pond, the fish moving, like living jewels beneath the surface. As he sat there trying to process the seismic shifts in his life over the past 48 hours, he noticed movement near the edge of the woods bordering the property. It was Mr. Davies again, walking briskly along a perimeter path, speaking discreetly into what looked like a small earpiece. He paused near a specific ancient-looking oak tree, seemed to check his surroundings carefully, then knelt down briefly near its base, partially obscured by bushes. After a moment he stood up, brushed off his trousers, and continued his patrol, disappearing around a bend in the path. Owen frowned. What had Davies been doing? It looked almost like he was checking something or perhaps leaving something. A dead drop? The phrase from the overheard phone call echoed in his mind. Driven by a sudden, reckless impulse, Owen waited until Davies was well out of sight, then quickly made his way over to the old oak tree, heart pounding. He scanned the ground near the base, parting the bushes. At first, he saw nothing but damp earth and fallen leaves. But then, his eyes caught a faint disturbance in the soil, a small patch that looked recently smoothed over. Kneeling down, he carefully brushed away the leaves and topsoil. His fingers hit something hard, metallic. He dug gently around it, unearthing a small heavy waterproof cylinder about the size of a thermos flask sealed tightly. It bore no markings. He stared at it, adrenaline surging through him. This had to be connected to the phone call, to the package, to the secrets Genevieve and Davies were guarding so closely. What was inside? Sensitive documents? Data drives? Something illegal? He felt a strong urge to open it, to find answers. But the risk, if Davies or Genevieve discovered he'd found this, the consequences would likely be severe. His purpose might suddenly become much clearer and much more dangerous. He glanced, back towards the house hidden now by the trees. He was being watched. He felt sure of it, even if only by cameras. With trembling hands, Owen quickly reburied the cylinder exactly as he'd found it, carefully smoothing the soil and scattering leaves over the spot, trying to erase any sign of his discovery. He stood up, wiped the dirt from his hands onto his jeans, and forced himself to walk casually back towards the house, his mind racing. The coded messages, the locked rooms implied by Genevieve's private wing, and now this, a clandestine drop point right here on the estate grounds. This wasn't just a marriage of convenience to maintain appearances. Genevieve Dubois was involved in something far more serious, something that required secret communications and hidden exchanges. And he, Owen Davis, her brand-new contractually bound husband, was living right in the middle of it, completely exposed and utterly clueless. The fear was no longer abstract. It was cold, sharp, and immediate. The week leading up to the Atherton gala crawled by for Owen with the agonizing slowness of a watched pot that refused to boil. Anxiety, fed by the fragmented, ominous phone conversation he'd overheard Mr. Davies conducting, had lodged itself like a cold stone in his stomach. Each shadow in the vast, silent house seemed deeper. Every creak of the floorboards in the empty corridors sounded like an approaching footstep. The phrase, "he suspects nothing. He serves his purpose," echoed in his mind on a disturbing loop. Who was he? It had to be Owen himself. And what was his purpose beyond being a husband by contract for a year? The words contingency, risk, sensitive, thorn. They swirled in his head, forming threatening patterns he couldn't decipher, but which reeked of danger. Studying became a lost battle. He'd sit for hours in the quiet, well-appointed library, one of the few common areas his presence was tacitly permitted. His anatomy and physiology textbooks open, but the words swam meaninglessly before his eyes. His mind was too busy trying to pass every minimal interaction, every fleeting glance from Genevieve or Davies, searching for confirmation of his growing suspicions. He felt like a rat in a luxurious maze, aware of a trap somewhere nearby, but clueless as to its location or trigger. The irony of his situation was almost palpable. He'd entered this arrangement to escape a financial snare, only perhaps to have walked directly into something far more perilous. On Thursday afternoon, as scheduled, Mr. Davies appeared at the door of his suite. The presence of the household manager, always quiet and efficient, now felt charged with a sinister subtext to Owen. "Mr. Davis," Davies announced, with his customary impersonal politeness. "Mr. Armando, the tailor, has arrived for your final fitting for the gala attire." "Of course, Mr. Davies, I'm ready," Owen replied, forcing a neutral tone, rising from the chair where he'd been staring blankly at a diagram of the circulatory system without absorbing a thing. He followed Davies through the silent corridors to a rarely used sitting room, where a small, meticulous older man with a measuring tape draped around his neck and a professional air waited beside an impeccable tuxedo hanging on a padded valet stand. The fabric was a deep, luxurious black, with silk lapels that seemed to softly gleam even in the diffuse afternoon light. It looked like something out of a James Bond film, ridiculously expensive and utterly incongruous on Owen Davis, the nursing student. "Mr. Armando," Davies greeted the tailor with a nod. "Mr. Davis." Owen exchanged a quick handshake with the tailor, murmuring a greeting. Then the ritual of the fitting began. Owen shed his worn university sweatshirt and pulled on the crisp, starched white dress shirt, then the waistcoat, and finally, the tuxedo jacket. The fabric felt incredibly smooth, lightweight yet structured, settling onto his shoulders in a way his cheap clothes never had. It was like wearing a second skin woven from money and power. It made him feel even more like an imposter. As Mr. Armando circled him, making minute adjustments with pins, murmuring in Italian about the drape, the sleeve length, the line of the shoulder, Owen was acutely aware of Mr. Davies standing near the door, observing the entire process with his watchful, unreadable eyes. Davies wasn't just supervising the fitting. He seemed to be assessing Owen, gauging how he carried himself in this borrowed finery, perhaps measuring his suitability for the purpose he was meant to serve. "The fit appears excellent, Mr. Armando," Davies commented finally, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the tailor's murmurs. "It will require only a slight adjustment to the trouser hem." "Si, perfetto," the tailor agreed, deftly marking the trousers with chalk. While Owen stood there, feeling like a mannequin, Davies moved slightly closer. "The Atherton Gala is an event of paramount importance to Mrs. Dubois, Mr. Davis," he said in a low voice, almost casual, yet Owen detected the instructional undertone. "Many influential individuals will be in attendance." He paused. "Your discretion will be essential. As discussed, avoid lengthy conversations, particularly regarding business or finance. If approached by certain individuals," he didn't specify whom, "a polite smile and a deferral to Mrs. Dubois or myself is the appropriate response." He looked directly at Owen. "Particularly should you encounter associates of Mr. Marcus Thorne. It is imperative that you avoid any indiscretion." The specific mention of Thorne sent a chill through Owen, connecting directly to the overheard phone call. This warning wasn't just about social etiquette, it was about avoiding a specific danger. "I understand completely, Mr. Davies," Owen replied, keeping his voice as steady as possible, meeting the manager's gaze. "Absolute discretion." Davies seemed satisfied, offering a barely perceptible nod before turning his attention back to the tailor, who was completing his adjustments. "Excellent, Mr. Armando. Please take the suit and ensure it is prepared by tomorrow evening." After the tailor had departed with the tuxedo, Davies turned back to Owen. "Mrs. Dubois also requested I provide you with this." He held out a small, elegant card. "It is a summary of the key guests with whom she is likely to interact. You may find it beneficial to familiarize yourself with the names and faces." Owen took the card, surprised. It was a concise list, featuring thumbnail photos and brief descriptions of perhaps 20 people, politicians, CEOs, philanthropists. Marcus Thorne's face stared coldly from the page. So did several other names Owen vaguely recognized from financial headlines. Why did Genevieve want him to know these people if he was supposed to avoid substantial conversation? Was it a test or a way of equipping him to identify threats? The ambiguity was unnerving. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," Owen said, pocketing the card. "Remember, Mr. Davis," Davies added, his eyes meeting Owen's again with a cool intensity, "appearances are everything. Your role is to support Mrs. Dubois silently and impeccably. Any deviation could have undesirable consequences." The veiled threat hung in the air before Davies turned and exited the room, leaving Owen alone with the echo of his words and the uncomfortable feel of expensive fabric against his skin. Later that day, needing fresh air to clear his head, Owen decided to walk the grounds, keeping to the permitted pathways through the meticulously landscaped gardens. The day was cool but sunny, and the quiet outside felt less oppressive than the silence within the house. As he rounded a path leading towards the back of the property, near a seldom-used service gate, he heard the low rumble of an engine, shielded. By the autumn foliage of a large rhododendron bush, he saw an unmarked black panel van idling by the gate. It wasn't a standard delivery truck from UPS or FedEx. The van was nondescript, almost stealthy. As he watched, the side door slid open and Mr. Davies emerged quickly. He glanced around, ensuring no one was watching. Owen shrank further behind the bush, then accepted a small metallic briefcase from a burly man who remained inside the van, his face obscured by shadows. The exchange was swift, silent, almost military in its efficiency. Davies didn't open the briefcase. He simply gripped it firmly and walked briskly back towards the house via a service door, disappearing from view. The van immediately pulled away, its tires quiet on the gravel drive. Owen remained crouched behind the bush for several minutes after the van had gone, his heart pounding hard against his ribs. A metal briefcase, exchanged furtively at a service gate by an unidentified driver, and the ever-present Mr. Davies, connecting back to the phone call about packages, dead drops, and risk. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just high-powered business. This felt dangerous. Money laundering, industrial espionage, something worse. He had no idea what was in the briefcase, but the clandestine nature of the exchange confirmed his worst suspicions. Genevieve Dubois was involved in something secret, and likely illicit, something requiring extreme security, absolute discretion, and apparently a contract husband who asked no questions and perhaps served as a convenient distraction or shield. His purpose. Rising slowly, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air, Owen walked back towards the main house via a different path, his mind racing. The anxiety he'd felt before had now solidified into real, tangible fear. He wasn't just in a marriage of convenience. He was embedded within a dangerous intrigue, and he had no idea of the rules of the game or what would happen if he made a wrong move. The upcoming Atherton Gala no longer felt like merely an uncomfortable social obligation. It felt like walking into a potential minefield. The grand ballroom of the Philadelphia Museum of Art pulsed with a low, sophisticated thrum, the murmur of hundreds of influential voices, the clinking of champagne flutes, the elegant strains of a live string quartet. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden light over a sea of designer gowns and bespoke tuxedos. Priceless masterpieces lined the walls, observing the glittering assembly with silent, timeless indifference. For Owen, stepping into this rarefied atmosphere on Genevieve Dubois' arm felt like entering an entirely different dimension, one governed by unspoken codes, veiled intentions, and the quiet hum of immense power and wealth. He played his part, as practiced, maintaining a polite, attentive smile, keeping his posture straight, his hand resting lightly on Genevieve's back or offering his arm as she navigated the crowded room. He felt the curious glances, the speculative whispers, following them like a wake. Is that really him? Dubois' new husband? Barely looks old enough to shave. Where did she find him? Must be quite the story. He tried to ignore them, focusing on Genevieve's subtle cues, on appearing calm and supportive, the picture of the devoted young spouse. Inside, his nerves were frayed wires, his senses on high alert after witnessing the briefcase exchange earlier. Every face in the crowd seemed like a potential threat, every polite greeting a possible interrogation. Genevieve, however, was flawless. She moved through the glittering throng with the effortless grace and command of a monarch. Her public persona was warmer than her private one. Her smile radiant, though it rarely reached her eyes, Owen noted. Her conversation witty and engaging. She introduced Owen with a simple, "And this is my husband, Owen," offering no further details, smoothly, steering conversations away from personal inquiries about him and towards art, philanthropy, or neutral business topics. She was a master manipulator of social dynamics, creating an aura of settled domesticity While simultaneously projecting undiminished power, Owen found himself relying heavily on the cheat sheet Mr. Davies had provided, mentally matching names to faces as Genevieve greeted senators, judges, tech moguls, and old-money philanthropists. He shook hands firmly when introduced, murmured polite inanities. "A pleasure to meet you. A wonderful event. The museum looks stunning tonight," and quickly faded into the background of the conversation, just as instructed. It was an exhausting performance, requiring constant vigilance. He noticed Mr. Davies moving discreetly along the edges of the room, his eyes constantly scanning, occasionally speaking softly into his earpiece. Davies' presence wasn't overtly menacing, but it added to the underlying tension Owen felt, a reminder that this glittering event might also be a landscape of unseen risks. Then, Owen saw him again, Marcus Thorne. Holding court near the large central fountain, surrounded by a sycophantic group, Thorne exuded an aura of predatory confidence. His cold eyes swept the room, eventually landing on Genevieve and Owen as they spoke with the museum director. A slow, unpleasant smile spread across Thorne's face. He excused himself from his group and began making his way towards them, his path deliberate, cutting through the crowd like a shark fin through water. Owen felt his stomach clench. He subtly alerted Genevieve with a slight pressure on her arm. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, her smile remaining fixed as she concluded her conversation with the director, turning just as Thorne arrived. "Genevieve, radiant as always," Thorne greeted, his voice smooth but his eyes holding a glint of malice as they flicked towards Owen. "And your consort?" "Marcus," Genevieve replied, her tone matching his superficial pleasantry, though her eyes were like chips of jade. "Enjoying the evening?" "Immensely," Thorne purred, "though I confess I'm still rather intrigued by your sudden venture into matrimony, especially with someone so fresh-faced." He turned his full attention to Owen, his smile widening, showing too many teeth. "Tell me, Owen, is it Owen? What is it exactly that you do, besides accompanying the formidable Mrs. Dubois, of course?" The question was deliberately condescending, designed to put Owen on the spot, to highlight his perceived insignificance. Owen felt his cheeks flush, but he remembered Davies's instructions. Deflect. "I'm currently completing my nursing studies," Owen replied, keeping his voice steady, polite. "It's demanding work, but rewarding." "Nursing!" Thorne exclaimed with exaggerated surprise. "How noble and unexpected. Genevieve usually prefers partners with more tangible assets." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice conspiratorially, though loud enough for both Owen and Genevieve to hear clearly. "Tell me, Owen, are you fully aware of the complexities of Genevieve's world? The risks involved?" Sometimes his eyes bored into Owen's. "Being associated with certain enterprises can attract unwanted attention. Accidents can happen." The barely veiled threat hung heavy in the air. Owen felt a chill despite the warmth of the ballroom. This wasn't just business rivalry. Thorne was actively trying to intimidate him, perhaps even warn him off. Before Owen could formulate a response, or Genevieve could intervene, Thorne clapped him lightly, falsely, on the shoulder. "Well, do be careful, young man. It's a dangerous world out there, especially when swimming with sharks." He offered Genevieve another predatory smile. "Always a pleasure, Genevieve." And then he turned and walked away, disappearing back into the glittering crowd. Owen felt shaken. Thorne hadn't just been rude, he'd been threatening. The mention of accidents felt chillingly specific, especially after the clandestine briefcase exchange Owen had witnessed. He looked at Genevieve. Her face was perfectly composed, her public smile back in place, but her eyes held a spark of cold fury. "Pay him no mind," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the din, though her grip on his arm tightened almost painfully for a second. "Marcus Thorne enjoys games. He is irrelevant." But Owen didn't believe she thought he was irrelevant. The tension between them had been palpable. As they continued to circulate, Owen found it harder to maintain his polite facade. Thorne's words echoed in his mind. Risks, accidents, dangerous world. He scanned the faces in the crowd with a new sense of suspicion. Who were Genevieve's enemies? Who were her allies? Was everyone here playing a part just like him? Later, while Genevieve was momentarily engrossed in a conversation with a group of trustees near the main staircase, Owen stepped back slightly, needing a moment to breathe. From his vantage point, he had a clear view across the ballroom. He saw Marcus Thorne talking animatedly with two other men Owen didn't recognize, but who carried themselves with a similar air of ruthless confidence. Then, his eyes caught Mr. Davies again. The household manager was standing near a service corridor, partially hidden by a large marble pillar, speaking urgently with the same plain-clothed security man Owen had seen him with earlier. This time, Owen saw Davies discreetly pass a small, folded piece of paper to the security man, who quickly pocketed it and nodded before melting away through the service door. Another secret exchange, right here amidst the oblivious crowd. Owen felt a growing certainty that the gala wasn't just a social obligation or a business networking event for Genevieve. It was an operational theater. Deals were being made, information exchanged, threats delivered, all beneath the glittering surface of polite society. And he was standing right in the center of it, wearing a tuxedo like a target, completely unaware of the real game being played. His purpose, he suspected with a dawning horror, might be less about image and more about being a visible, vulnerable distraction, drawing attention away from Genevieve's real operations, or worse, serving as potential collateral if things went wrong. The million-dollar contract suddenly felt like hazard pay for a job whose dangers were becoming terrifyingly apparent. He needed to find out what was really going on before one of Thorne's predicted accidents found him. The drive back from the Atherton Gala was shrouded in a heavy, almost suffocating silence. The sleek sedan glided through the darkened streets of Philadelphia, the city lights flashing past the tinted windows, unnoticed by its occupants. Genevieve sat perfectly still beside Owen, her posture erect, her gaze fixed somewhere in the middle distance. The warm, engaging mask she had worn for the public had vanished the moment the car door closed, replaced by an impenetrable shield. Fauve cool reserve. The emerald and diamond earrings still sparkled at her lobes, catching the intermittent streetlights, but the woman wearing them seemed miles away, locked in her own private, complex world. Owen, still feeling the phantom weight of the tuxedo, sat rigidly, his mind replaying the evening's events on a loop. Thorne's thinly veiled threats, risks, accidents, and swimming with sharks echoed ominously. He pictured Mr. Davies's furtive conversations, the quick, hidden exchange of the envelope, the earlier memory of the metallic cylinder buried near the oak tree. It all painted a picture far removed from a simple marriage of convenience designed to bolster a corporate image. This felt like espionage, like high-stakes intrigue where the consequences were terrifyingly real. And his purpose? He couldn't shake the chilling conviction that he was little more than a well-dressed pawn, deliberately placed on the board to distract or perhaps even absorb an attack aimed at the Queen. He risked a sideways glance at Genevieve. Her profile was outlined against the passing city lights, elegant and composed, yet he sensed an undercurrent of tightly coiled tension beneath the surface. Was she worried about Thorne's threats, about the secrets she was clearly keeping? Or was her composure absolute, her control unshakable? He desperately wanted to ask, to demand answers, but the stringent terms of their contract, the memory of Davies's warnings, and a growing sense of self-preservation kept him silent. Asking the wrong questions in this house, he suspected, could be extremely hazardous. The car finally swept through the imposing gates of the Dubois estate and pulled up before the main entrance. The house loomed dark and silent against the night sky, more fortress than home. As the driver opened Genevieve's door, she turned briefly to Owen. "Thank you for your attendance tonight, Mr. Davis," she said, her voice coolly formal, offering no hint of the evening's underlying drama. "You performed your role satisfactorily." With that, she exited the car and disappeared swiftly into the house, Mr. Davies materializing seemingly from the shadows to meet her just inside the door before it closed, leaving Owen alone in the car once more, satisfactorily. The word felt like a dismissal, reinforcing his status as a paid performer, an accessory. The driver held Owen's door open, his expression impassive, Owen stepped out into the cool night air, the silence of the estate pressing in on him. Back in the suffocating luxury of his suite, Owen shed the tuxedo like shedding a constricting skin. Sleep, however, was impossible. His mind buzzed with adrenaline and fear. He paced the floor of the elegant sitting room, the plush carpet muffling his restless steps. He replayed Thorne's words, Davies's furtive actions, Genevieve's icy control. He thought about the buried cylinder, the exchanged envelope. What was Genevieve involved in? What were the risks Thorne spoke of? And how deeply was Owen himself entangled, simply by virtue of the marriage certificate bearing his name? He went to the window, looking out at the dark, manicured gardens bathed in the eerie glow of strategically placed landscape lighting. The beauty of the place felt like a facade, masking something hidden and dangerous. He felt trapped, isolated, acutely aware of his own vulnerability. He had no allies here. Davies was clearly Genevieve's loyal enforcer. The other staff members were distant, professionally aloof. He couldn't even confide in his mother without revealing the terrifying truth of his situation. Restlessness gnawed at him. He couldn't just sit here waiting for the next cryptic clue or veiled threat. He needed information, context, anything to help him understand the game he was caught in. Driven by a need to do something, however risky, he made a decision. Waiting until the house had settled into the deepest quiet of the pre-dawn hours, Owen slipped silently out of his suite. He moved through the darkened corridors on stockinged feet, his heart pounding against his ribs. He avoided the main staircase and common areas, sticking to the less used hallways of the West Wing, his knowledge of the permitted zones now serving a different purpose. His destination wasn't specific. He was simply searching for anything out. Jove Place, anything that might offer a clue. He thought about trying to reach the East Wing, Genevieve's private domain, but knew it would be heavily secured, perhaps alarmed. The risk was too great. He found himself near the Grand Library again. The heavy doors were closed but unlocked. He slipped inside, the familiar scent of old paper and leather polish filling the air. Moonlight streamed through the tall, arched windows, casting long shadows from the towering bookshelves. He scanned the room, his eyes adjusting to the dimness. Everything seemed in its usual perfect order. He ran his hand along the spines of the books, mostly classic literature, history, philosophy, nothing obviously related to modern business or espionage. He moved towards the large fireplace at one end of the room. It hadn't been used recently, the hearth was clean, but as he knelt, pretending to examine the antique fireplace tools, his eyes caught something small lodged deep in the grout between the hearthstones, almost invisible in the shadows. He reached down carefully. It was a tiny, rolled-up piece, of paper, no bigger than his fingernail, seemingly overlooked during cleaning. Heart-pounding, he carefully unrolled it. It wasn't a note. It looked like a fragment, perhaps torn from a larger document or label. On it were printed a short sequence of alphanumeric characters, something like X7B K49P2, followed by a small unfamiliar symbol, almost like a stylized bird or wing. It meant nothing to him on its own. It could be a serial number, a code fragment, part of an inventory tag. It could be completely insignificant, dropped accidentally by a staff member, or even Genevieve herself. Yet, finding it here, hidden, overlooked, after the events of the evening, after witnessing the secret exchanges, felt significant. It felt like a tangible piece of the puzzle, however small and cryptic. What did this code relate to? The briefcase? The envelope from the gala? The buried cylinder? Owen quickly memorized the sequence and the symbol, then carefully, meticulously, tucked the tiny paper fragment back exactly where he'd found it, ensuring it was hidden again. He couldn't risk taking it. Its absence might be noticed. But the information was now logged in his memory. He slipped out of the library as silently as he had entered, his mind racing. The clue was small, ambiguous, but it was something. It was confirmation that there were hidden layers, coded information, secret dealings happening right under his nose. It intensified his fear but also solidified his resolve. He couldn't afford to remain passive, to simply play the part and hope for the best. He needed to understand what Genevieve was involved in, what dangers Thorne represented, and what his own purpose truly entailed. His safety, he realized with chilling certainty, might depend on uncovering the truth before Genevieve's dangerous games consumed him entirely. The one-year contract suddenly felt like a life sentence if he couldn't figure out how to navigate or escape the treacherous currents he was caught in. The undesirable consequences Mr. Davies had warned about felt terrifyingly real. The tiny fragment of paper bearing the code X7BK49P2 and the stylized wing symbol became Owen's obsession, a tangible anchor in the swirling sea of his fear and uncertainty. He kept the sequence committed to memory, replaying it over and over, searching for patterns, for meaning. Was it a password? A coordinate? An inventory number? A flight designation? He spent hours discreetly searching online, using the secure laptop in his suite, diving down rabbit holes of corporate espionage forums, cryptography basics, even obscure ornithological databases, searching for the wing symbol, all yielding nothing concrete. The code remained stubbornly opaque. His behavior inevitably shifted. The constant vigilance, the gnawing anxiety, made him jumpy, preoccupied. He tried to maintain the facade of the unassuming husband during his brief interactions with Genevieve, but he felt increasingly transparent, certain that her sharp jade eyes saw the fear simmering beneath his polite smiles. He found himself analyzing her every word, every gesture, searching for hidden meanings. When she offhandedly mentioned needing to finalize details for a new offshore acquisition, his mind immediately leaped to the briefcase, the code, Thorne's threats. Was this the dangerous game she was playing? He considered trying to retrieve the buried cylinder near the oak tree, driven by a desperate need for answers. He even went so far as to scout the location again during a quiet afternoon walk, noting the exact spot, assessing the visibility from the house's security cameras. But the risk felt enormous. Getting caught by Davies digging up a clandestine package, the consequences would likely be severe. He was trapped between the danger of ignorance and the danger of discovery. The tension escalated a few days later. Owen was in the home gym, trying to work off his nervous energy on the treadmill, when his encrypted phone, the one provided by Davies, buzzed with an unknown number. He rarely received calls on it, usually only texts from Davies about schedule changes. Hesitantly he answered, "Mr. Davis." The voice was electronically distorted, low and menacing. A word of friendly advice. Some contracts are more binding than others, and some partnerships are hazardous to one's health. Walk away while you still can. Consider your purpose fulfilled. Click. The line went dead. Owen stumbled off the treadmill, his heart hammering against his ribs, cold sweat trickling down his back. It wasn't Davies, it wasn't Genevieve. The distorted voice, the specific reference to his purpose, it had to be connected to Thorne, or someone working against Genevieve. It was a direct threat. Walk away while you still can. But how could he? He was legally married to Genevieve, living in her fortress, his finances inextricably linked to her contract, and walking away might be just as dangerous as staying. They knew who he was, where he was. The threat solidified his resolve. Ignorance was no longer an option. It was a liability. He had to understand the code. He needed leverage, information, something. His mind raced, thinking about the symbol, the stylized wing. Where had he seen something similar? He racked his brain, picturing the house, the grounds. Then it hit him. The gates, the main entrance gates, the heavy wrought iron ones, bore a discreet modern insignia, not just a D for Dubois, but a stylized D incorporated into a shape that, yes, could be interpreted as a wing or perhaps a bird in flight. Dubois Aviation. He rushed back to his suite, his mind working. Furiously, he accessed the secure browser on his provided laptop and started searching for subsidiaries or lesser-known branches of Dubois International Holdings, specifically looking for aviation, aerospace, or advanced technology divisions, cross-referencing, with the wing symbol. After nearly an hour of navigating complex corporate structures and shell companies, he found it. Project Nightingale, a highly classified, supposedly defunct aerospace R&D division of Dubois Holdings, rumored to be involved in advanced drone technology. The division's old archived logo incorporated a stylized bird wing, remarkably similar to the symbol on the paper fragment. His heart pounded. Project Nightingale. The code X7B K49P2. Could it be a project number, a prototype designation, a flight path coordinate? He searched for the code itself within publicly accessible databases, patent filings, even leaked industry reports. Nothing. It was too specific, too hidden. But now he had a direction. Project Nightingale, advanced drone tech. And Marcus Thorne, whose own company, Thorne Dynamics, was a major competitor in the aerospace and defense sector. The pieces began to form a terrifying picture. Genevieve wasn't just involved in shady finances, she was likely protecting cutting-edge, potentially military-grade technology from a ruthless competitor who played dirty. The briefcase, the cylinder, the envelope, likely containing data, components, or communications related to this project. And Owen. His sudden marriage to Genevieve might have served multiple purposes, providing a public distraction, perhaps creating legal hurdles for Thorne if he tried corporate espionage tactics involving personal leverage, or even, chillingly, acting as a temporary legal heir or custodian of certain intellectual property rights if something happened to Genevieve, preventing Thorne from easily seizing control. He was a shield, a legal firewall, a pawn in a high-stakes corporate war. Just as this realization fully dawned on him, the intercom in his suite buzzed sharply. It was Davies's voice, calm but urgent. "Mr. Davis, Mrs. Dubois requires your presence." In her main office immediately. Owen's blood ran cold, she knows. Had Davies seen him digging near the tree? Had his online searches triggered some internal security alert? Or had Thorne made another move, taking a deep breath, trying to school? His features into a neutral mask, Owen left his suite and walked towards the forbidden east wing. The doors to Genevieve's main office were open. She stood behind her vast minimalist desk, not working, but staring intently at a complex schematic displayed on a large wall-mounted screen, schematics that looked suspiciously like advanced drone designs. Mr. Davies stood near the door, his posture rigid. Genevieve turned as Owen entered, her jade eyes sharp, assessing. "Mr. Davis," she began, her voice dangerously smooth, "it seems our quiet arrangement has attracted unwanted attention." I received a phone call," Owen admitted, deciding partial. Honesty was his only recourse. Threatening, telling me to walk away. Genevieve nodded slowly, unsurprised. "Marcus Thorne does not appreciate obstacles, and our marriage, it appears, is a significant obstacle to his plans." "Plans for what?" Owen asked, emboldened by fear. "What is this really about, Genevieve? Project Nightingale, drones. What was in the briefcase, the cylinder?" Genevieve's eyes narrowed. "You've been busy, Mr. Davis." Davies took a step forward, but Genevieve held up a hand almost imperceptibly. Curiosity is a dangerous trait in this house, but perhaps ignorance is more dangerous now. She gestured towards the screen. "Yes, Project Nightingale. Highly advanced autonomous drone technology, with significant strategic applications. Technology Thorne wants desperately. He has been trying to acquire it, legally and otherwise, for years. And the cylinder, the briefcase. Secure data cores. Encrypted communications," she answered curtly. "Thorne's methods are ruthless. He resorts to sabotage, blackmail, corporate, espionage, even physical intimidation. My previous head of security," she paused, a flicker of something cold in her eyes, "met with an unfortunate accident 6 months ago." Owen felt a chill. Thorne's threats weren't idle. "Why me?" Owen asked, again the question burning. "Why marry a stranger, a nursing student?" Genevieve looked at him directly, her gaze unflinching. "Several reasons. Thorne thrives on predictability. An unexpected marriage to someone completely outside my usual sphere created confusion, disruption. Legally, having a spouse complicates. Certain hostile takeover tactics or attempts to seize assets should something happen to me." She stated it matter-of-factly. "And frankly, Mr. Davis, your specific profile, your financial desperation, your lack of connections, your inherent trustworthiness suggested by your chosen profession, made you both pliable and, ironically, believable as someone I might impulsively, perhaps foolishly, marry for companionship, diverting attention from the real stakes. Pliable, believable, expendable. Owen felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. So, I was just bait? A shield? A necessary complication in a dangerous game, Genevieve corrected coolly, for which you were extremely well compensated. Before Owen could respond, Davies's encrypted phone buzzed urgently. He answered, listened intently, his face growing pale. "Madam," he interrupted, his voice tight. "Security breach. Perimeter alert triggered near the East Terrace access point. Multiple unknowns detected." Genevieve reacted instantly, her cool composure replaced by sharp command. "Lockdown protocols, Davies. Alert internal security. Owen," she turned to him, her eyes blazing with intensity. "Stay with me. Do exactly as I say." Suddenly, the distant sound of shattering glass echoed through the house, followed by muffled shouts. They weren't just being threatened anymore. Thorne or his operatives were making a direct move. Genevieve quickly crossed to a hidden panel behind a painting, keying in a code. A section of the bookshelf slid open, revealing a reinforced steel. "Door inside now," she ordered Owen, pushing him towards the opening. It was a panic room, small, windowless, equipped with communications gear and emergency supplies. Davies stood by the main office door, drawing a discreet but professional-looking handgun from inside his jacket. "Secure Mrs. Dubois, Davies," Genevieve commanded. "I will initiate containment." She began rapidly typing commands into a console. Inside the panic room, Owen watched, stunned, as the peaceful, luxurious mansion transformed into a battleground. He could hear running footsteps outside, muffled commands, the sharp report of what sounded like suppressed gunfire. This was real. The danger Thorne hinted at was violently manifesting. He had been living in the middle of a corporate war zone, without even knowing it. Genevieve worked frantically at the console, her face grim. "Thorne underestimated our internal defenses," she muttered, more to herself than to Owen. "But they're clearly desperate." She glanced at Owen, who stood frozen, useless, terrified. "I apologize for involving you in this, Mr. Davis. My calculations weren't insufficient regarding the level of Thorne's aggression." Suddenly a loud bang rattled the main office door, followed by splintering wood. Davies braced himself, gun raised. "They're through," he yelled. Genevieve slammed her hand down on a large red button inside the panic room, just as the office door burst open. An ear-splitting alarm blared throughout the house, accompanied by flashing emergency lights. Heavy steel shutters slammed down over the windows. From outside, Owen heard the approaching wail of sirens. "Local authorities alerted," Genevieve stated grimly, pulling Owen fully inside the panic room as Davies fired 2 quick shots towards the intruders before diving in after them just as the heavy steel door slid shut, sealing them inside. Toki were safe for the moment, sealed in the reinforced room, listening to the sounds of chaos outside. Muffled shouts, more shots, the blaring alarm, the approaching sirens. Owen leaned against the cool steel wall, breathing heavily, trying to process the sheer terror and unreality of the situation. He looked at Genevieve. Her face was pale but resolute, her eyes fixed on the security monitors displaying multiple camera feeds from inside the house, showing armed intruders being systematically subdued by a swift, efficient internal security team Owen hadn't even known existed. "It seems," Genevieve said finally, her voice tight as the sounds of struggle subsided and police lights bathed the exterior monitors in flashing red and blue, "that Mr. Thorne's gamble did not pay off tonight." She looked at Owen, a complex mix of calculation and perhaps reluctant respect in her eyes. "Your presence here, however unintentional its deeper implications, served its purpose after all. It provoked Thorne into acting recklessly, prematurely. The aftermath was swift and surgically clean, at least on the surface. Police secured the scene, apprehending Thorne's operatives caught inside. Genevieve, through Davies and her lawyers, provided a carefully curated statement about an attempted industrial espionage incident, downplaying the violence, mentioning Owen only as her husband, who was thankfully unharmed. Thorne himself remained, untouchable, insulated by layers of plausible deniability, but his failed overt assault had exposed him, damaged his reputation, and likely thwarted his immediate plans to seize Project Nightingale. A week later, the house restored to its pristine, silent state, Genevieve summoned Owen to her study. The atmosphere was different, less tense but still devoid of warmth. "Mr. Davis," she began formally, "the immediate threat from Marcus Thorne appears to have been neutralized, thanks in part to the situation your presence inadvertently created. His aggression has forced certain regulatory bodies to scrutinize his operations more closely." She paused. "Our contract stipulated 1 year. However, given the circumstances, the premature exposure and resolution of the primary threat and your understandable discomfort with the situation's true nature, I am prepared to offer an early termination of our agreement." She slid a document across the desk. "This legally dissolves the marriage, effective immediately. It includes the full completion, bonus originally stipulated, transferred to an account of your choosing, along with an additional sum acknowledging the duress and risk you were subjected to. The total amount implied was significantly more than the initial $1 million. The non-disclosure agreement remains strictly in effect, naturally." Owen stared at the document, then at Genevieve. Freedom, safety, more money than he could have imagined. It was everything he thought he wanted. He could walk away, back to his old life, his mother safe, his future secure. "Thank you, Mrs. Dubois," he said, his voice quiet. He picked up the pen. "However," Genevieve added, stopping him before he signed, "there is an alternative." Owen looked up, surprised. "Your performance under pressure," she continued, her gaze analytical. "Your ability to remain calm, your inherent discretion, even your initial resourcefulness in securing this position. These are qualities I value. Dubois International requires individuals with such attributes. Should you choose, upon completion of your nursing degree, which I will of course continue to finance, a position within our corporate security or risk assessment division could be made available to you. A legitimate position, well compensated, utilizing your skills in a less unorthodox capacity." Owen was stunned. A job offer after everything, working for her, knowing what he now knew. "Why?" he asked bluntly. A flicker of something almost human crossed Genevieve's face. "Perhaps because loyalty, even loyalty born of desperation and deception, is a rare commodity, Mr. Davis. And perhaps," she added, a touch of weariness in her voice, "because navigating the world I inhabit requires allies one can eventually learn to trust, even those one initially intended merely to use." She pushed another, much simpler document across the desk. "Or you sign the dissolution agreement, take the funds, and disappear back into your former life. The choice, this time, is genuinely yours." Owen looked at the two documents. One offered escape, immense wealth, a return to normalcy. The other offered something else. A path into Genevieve's complex, dangerous world, but perhaps with his eyes open this time, as an employee, not a pawn. He thought of the adrenaline, the fear, but also the strange sense of purpose he'd felt in uncovering the clues, in surviving the chaos. He thought of his nursing skills, observation, assessment, calm under pressure, and how oddly applicable they seemed to this world of corporate intrigue. He looked at Genevieve, no longer seeing just the cold, calculating businesswoman, but a complex, powerful survivor playing a high-stakes game. He made his choice. 1 year later, Owen Davis, RN, adjusted the collar of his crisp white shirt, the fabric far removed from the cheap cotton of his student days or the bespoke silk of his brief tenure as Mr. Dubois. He stood looking out the window of a sleek, modern office high above the Philadelphia skyline. His office. He was now a junior analyst in the Risk Assessment Division of Dubois International Holdings, specializing in personnel security and threat analysis for high-level executives, a job Genevieve had indeed created for him after he graduated toppy of his nursing class. His mother was stable, comfortable in the best care facility, her future secured. He visited her often, no longer needing to lie about his life, though he kept the details of Genevieve's world necessarily vague. He rarely saw Genevieve socially now. Their relationship was strictly professional. He reported to a different division head, though he occasionally participated in security briefings where she was present. Their interactions were polite, formal, marked by a shared, unspoken understanding of the bizarre year that had brought him here. There was no lingering romance, no easy friendship. But there was, perhaps, a measure of mutual, hard-earned respect. He had survived her game, and she, perhaps, had found an unexpectedly useful piece on her board. He sometimes wondered about the buried cylinder, the contents of the briefcase, the full extent of Project Nightingale. He knew better than to ask. Some doors, once closed, were best left unopened. He focused on his work, using his nursing skills of observation and analysis in this new, strange context, finding a surprising satisfaction in protecting others from the kind of dangers he had unknowingly stumbled into. He picked up a secure tablet, reviewing the travel itinerary for a Dubois executive heading to Zurich, cross-referencing threat assessments, ensuring secure transport, checking contingency plans. It was a world away from checking vital signs or comforting anxious patients, yet somehow the core principle felt the same. Assess the risk, protect the vulnerable, navigate the complexities. He had traded one kind of emergency room for another. And while his past year felt like a fever dream, Owen knew he wouldn't change the choices that led him here. He had survived, he had provided for his mother, and he had found an unexpected, if perilous, path forward. The game was still dangerous, but now at least he understood some of the rules. Owen's journey through a world of secrets and danger reminds us that choices made in desperation can lead down unexpected paths, and survival sometimes means adapting to the game. If you were captivated by this story of intrigue and consequence, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more gripping tales that explore the complex choices people make. Thank you for watching.